Are you looking for an inexpensive ham radio to go mobile? The QB25 from Radioddity is worth taking a peek at. Hi, and welcome to the Gadget Talk channel, where we do reviews and how-tos on a variety of cool electronic gadgets that catch my eye. In this video, we'll take a look at a small, fairly inexpensive transceiver from Radioddity called the QB25. Before we jump in, I hope you'll like, subscribe, and comment on this video. Some Radioddity products I've reviewed have been provided by Radioddity. That's not the case with this radio. I purchased it with my own funds, and as always, the reviews are my honest opinions. This radio is electrically the same as the QYT KT7900D radio. Both the 7900D and the QB25 have been around a while, so they're not new radios. The QB25's buttons are arranged a little differently, but other than that, they are the same device. When looking for this on the Radioddity website, you'll find it in the Business Radio section under Mobile Radios. What makes this radio different from most dual-band mobile radios is that this transceiver includes 2 additional bands, besides the usual 2-meter and 70-centimeter bands. It also includes the 220 band or 1.25 meter band and a band at 350 megahertz. Amateurs in the US don't use that band, so you're basically buying a tri-band device. In most parts of the US, the 220 band isn't very busy, but you'll likely find some nearby 220 repeaters if you live in a larger city or town. Here's a quick clip of what it sounds like.
Morning, Bill. Everyone on the net. My day's going pretty good. I'm taking my car down to the shop right now. My truck, taking it down to the shop right now to have a new emergency brake cable put on it. One of them's sticking, and I caught it in time before I burned the brakes up and stuff. So that was a good thing.
Let's take a look at what you'll get when yours arrives. So here's the box that the QB25 comes in. It's a pretty nice little box. It was all well protected. It doesn't amount to much. You can see my hand there. But the radio is pretty small too. So let's take a look at what you're going to find inside. Let's start with the owner's manual. The owner's manual here is the same green and white color. Looks pretty nice. It's got some diagrams and drawings and labels and then a description of what most of the buttons means and how to do some of the basic programming and operational functions of the radio. You'll note that this is electrically the same as a QYT radio, as in fact that the drawings inside are of that other radio. So that's pretty good to hear for our owner's manual. Some little attachments we'll put in here, and we've got the mounting bracket that will go either to the bottom of our workbench or in our vehicle, plus the associated screws with this little plastic parts kit. So here's the microphone that comes with the kit. The microphone feels pretty good in the hand. It's got the numbers here, 1 to 0, some command buttons, nice push to talk, a little hook for it to hang up on your workbench or radio bench or in your vehicle, and then it connects to the radio via an RJ45 type connector. So that's the microphone. It also comes with a programming cable, which is handy since this kind has a tip ring sleeve kind of connector. It goes in the back of the radio, and that's going to be different than the ones in your typical Chinese dual band handy talkies that use that K or K1 style connector. It's got a chip here in the alpha side of the USB cable, most likely a prolific chip, so you'll want to make sure that you've got the right drivers for those loaded on your computer, and that you know what USB port your computer uses for those drivers. And so that's the programming cable that comes with it. And so the important thing is, of course, the radio itself. And so the radio comes, it's got a power cord right here with a basic T-style connector in there that you see with a lot of different radios. The positive line is fused, and there's an extra fuse in that little parts kit that I showed you. Since we're talking about the back of the radio, there's an opening here for headphones or an external speaker. There's a data port, that's where the programming cable is going to go. The SO239, which is the output, and then a nice little fan to help keep it cool. You notice that it's got some metal case and some additional surface with this heat sink across the top. And right here, you may be able to see is the top firing speaker. On the sides, there's really nothing more than the connectors for the case. Same thing on the bottom, other than the basic model number and so forth for the radio itself. And then across the top of the radio, we've got all the controls. And so you've got the typical ones you find on these. This is the volume, and you press it to turn it on. And then the difference between this radio and the other brand's radio is where these buttons are, because they've got buttons on both sides of the screen. The QB25 has buttons only on the one side of the screen, but they're the same buttons. So you got exit and the mode switching buttons here, A, B, C, D, a call button, monitor button, FM to change to FM radio, and the VFO and memory mode button right here. And then we can make channel changes over here by twisting this particular button right there. So that's a quick tour of the radio. There's one other kind of little part that comes with that, and that's the extension wire. And the extension wire has the other half, the socket side of that T connector for the power, and then it comes with a 12-volt plug to fit in one of the 12-volt sockets of your vehicle. This being a 25-watt radio, the overall power consumption is not likely to exceed the power available at a 12-volt socket in your vehicle. Be sure to take a look at your vehicle's manual to verify the amperage available at your 12-volt socket. I know I'd looked up in my Ford F-150. There are several sockets in the vehicle. They're each protected by a 20-amp fuse. And so I know that I've got plenty of power at the 12-volt socket to use this here, which is really going to simplify my ability to mount the radio in the vehicle. And then last but not least, this kit comes with a quad band antenna. It's good at 2 meters, 1 1/4, 350 megahertz, and 440 or 70 centimeter bands. The 350 megahertz band, I think, is a business band, and so we're not going to be using that as amateur radio operators, but the radio will transmit in that band, and this antenna is constructed to transmit in those bands with reasonable SWR. It's got 2 parts with a PL59 on one side, so you'll need a PL59 type antenna mount on your vehicle if that's what, in fact, you're going to use. And it doesn't come with any cable, so that's going to be up to you. Those kits are widely available on Amazon and certainly at your local ham radio shop. So that's the antenna. It's called the 7900D. So that's handy since you've got some extra frequencies, that you've got the antenna that comes with the kit that will allow you to broadcast on those frequencies. We'll talk more about installation later. I put the radio on the desk and powered it up. Here's a quick overview of the buttons and the menus. So here's the QB25 all powered in. I've done some programming already, so we have some things to look at. As you can see across the top right here, we've got a number of icons. It tells us that we're on high power, wideband. The plus and minus means that the offsets are set so that we're on a repeater channel, and that the power is good. Not sure why it shows a battery display, but it does, and so that's where it is. By pressing the Mani button, it'll break the squelch, regardless of what you have your squelch setting at. FM will move to an FM receiver, and that's described in the instructions if you want to use this little radio to listen to FM broadcast. By pressing the VM button down here at the bottom, you're able to change the mode from the VFO to the memory mode. Everything right now is in memory mode, and I use the menu settings to use the name option for each of those bands. So you see letters and names as opposed to frequencies right now. And then underneath the on-off button over there is an exit button or an ABCD button. And by pressing that, you can change which of these is the priority. And then, of course, you can also do that with the microphone. So I've got the microphone in my hand, and using the exit button, you'll see the arrow move to the UHF register 2, Deer Valley repeater channel 8 register 3, and then another Shaw Butte repeater, this time in the 70 centimeter band. And we would know that if we press the VM button, it shows the frequency of that receiver. Now, to access the menus, the easiest way is to use the microphone. You can press this button over here. It's the confirm button as well as the channel change button. But I'm going to do this using the menu button on the microphone. So I'm going to enter the menu. And there are about 57 menus that we can deal with. So if I press from this display 01, I get down to my first memory. And actually the first memory is memory 0. And that's the TMR. It stands for transceiver multiple receive. And those you can set up to manage the scanning that this does, or how it prioritizes what it hears from these various registers, these A, B, C, and D. One of the interesting things about this radio is that there's something in it that when you're in the 220 area, there's a relay that clicks, so that there's either different final amplifiers or something different in the radio. And so if you have this set and it's scanning through the 220, every time it goes there, you're going to hear that relay click. And since it's clicking, that means it's mechanical. And so I've got this first menu item off right now, and I'm going to try it again here with different things in this in these registers that are not 220 to see if I can avoid that clicking. I'm using the up and down arrows here to step through. So I've got a small step, which allows me to program frequencies down to a pretty low level. Again, go into menu, go up to the next step is number 2, the squelch I've got on 4, high transmitter power, scramblers off. We don't use scramblers in amateur radio. Timeout timer, automatic power off, wide narrow. They're just a bunch of menu items, many of which are color based. So, you know, what color you want the text for this line? What color do you want the text for that line? What color do you want the text when it's transmitting, when you're receiving? So of those 57 menus, just a whole bunch of them are making color choices. Now, you can program a repeater from the microphone. It's a little funky, but certainly you can do that. You're going to start with going into the VFO mode. You're going to then type in the frequency for the transmit. You're going to go down to menu 7, set wide narrow, menu 46 to set the shift, either positive or negative. Go to channel menu 47 to type the offset amount. Go to menu 44 to set the channel that you want it stored into. And then this is where it gets a little odd, because when you get to that point, you're going to press menu and get out of the display, and it's not going to show plus and minus up at the top, which means you got to go back to VM or the VFO memory mode key, type in the transmitter frequency, and then store that in that same channel. And when you do that, the plus and the minus are going to show. So I've worked through that myself. Like I said, it's a little clunky. It can be done. There is a good demonstration of this on a YouTube video from another amateur, 2J4EZ, in the UK, I think. And he's programming a QYT8900, but the menus are the same. And so rather than demonstrate that to you, I'm just going to tell you that it in fact can be done. And if you want that demonstration, review his video. because it's very helpful, because it is a little odd. Obviously, you can avoid all that by using the customer programming software. There you're going to program the receive, and the transmit channels, and when you load it into your radio, all that stuff just works. And so most of the channels that I have in here, I did using the customer programming software, which we're going to take a look at here in just a minute. So those are the key points in the menus, and they're all described in the owner's manual. So take a few minutes to take a look at those, and you'll see that once you get it set up, the operation of the radio is really pretty easy, but getting it there might take a little bit of study and a little bit of work. Now here's a quick clip of the power output in the 3 ammeter bands. I'm broadcasting into my MFJ 874 SWR and power meter and into a dummy load, so we're not actually transmitting anything out over the air. You see I've got it set to forward power, and I've been playing with this a little bit, and so I'm going to use the 20 watt setting for VHF and UHF, and then I'm going to use the 200 watt setting for the 220 because it goes over the top of the 20 watt limit. So here at the 20 watt limit, it's the second from the bottom. It's this mode right here. And so we're on VHF call, so we'll transmit and we'll see what we have there. It's about 18.5, almost 19 watts. So that's pretty good. We'll go up to the UHF call channel, and so we'll see what we get there. Here we go with the transmit. It's a little lower. That's about 15.5 watts. Both of those are pretty good for a little radio like this. Now we'll go up to 220, and we'll change the scale to the 200 watt scale, which is up here. And we'll transmit. And in that case, we're at about 30. The first line is 10, 20, 30. We're just over the 30 mark there. And so that also is very good. So that's a little bit over than what's advertised. So there we have it. We've got about 19 on VHF, 15 on UHF, and about 30 on 220 using this little MFJ meter. The customer programming software is available from Radioddity. The zip file includes instructions for loading both the radio-specific CPS and the prolific chip drivers used to talk to the radio via the included programming cable. They're good instructions, so I won't go into the loading of that software here. I found the radio-specific CPS from Radioddity is especially good for programming radio variables. This radio is also accessible using Chirp. I found it was easiest to use both. Once I got the radio variables programmed and the file saved, I wrote the update to the radio and then opened Chirp. I wrote the radio to Chirp and then used Chirp's ability to access repeater info from online sources like RepeaterBook to build the channel memories. That saved a bunch of typing. Sorting and arranging channels in Chirp is pretty easy. When I was done with the channel structure, I wrote back to the radio. Let's take a quick look at the Radioddity CPS. There are lots of good Chirp tutorials on YouTube, so I won't go into that right now. So here's the display for the QB25 CPS from Radioddity. It looks pretty typical to most of the ones that you find. And when it comes up, you'll be presented with the channel information. Now, I opened up the last radio information that I saved and that I don't have the radio connected to it right now. But what you'll be seeing is what I've saved into my radio. So let's go through the menu here real quick. The files, the typical windows, new, open, save as. Channel information will give you this display right here. The option will give you this display, which gives you the opportunity to easily make changes to a lot of the variables within your radio. The signal displays are similar. They're going to give you access to the DTMF 2 and 5-tone menus, which I don't use, so I didn't mess with. The other is kind of handy here in that you can specify the range that you're going to be using, and then you can turn off some. So let's see, I want to turn off that 350 so I don't even make use of it. And if I wanted to make changes here to the frequencies to match the ammeter bands, I could do that. So that's here in this other display. In my program drop-down menu, this is where I can get my commands to read from the radio or write to the radio, which are the same as these two icons right here. Password gives you a chance to change the password. I haven't totally figured that out. It works without messing with it, and since I don't want to keep track of passwords, I'm leaving it the way it is. Communications opens up all of the ports that are available on your computer. The best thing to do here is, after you've installed those prolific drivers, open up your device manager, identify what COM port your prolific driver is assigned to, and then pick it here so that you can talk to the radio. If you try to talk to the radio and you have misidentified the COM port, you're not going to get a connection. And so that's the first thing to check. And then exit will allow you to exit the program. So let's look just quickly at some of the optional features. As I mentioned earlier, I like this display better than going through the menus on the radio, and a little bit better than what I saw in Chirp. So I do these selections here, and then I do my channel selections using Chirp. So I've got my TMR off. I was having a little bit of trouble with that 220 relay. I need to play around with that a little bit to choose which of these combinations I might want to use, so I can do some of that multi-band receiving without wearing that little relay out. I've got my squelch level set to 4. You can go up to 9. Timeout timer, automatic power off. I have that currently set to off. If you wanted to make a change, you could set that to, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and so forth. The beep you can turn on or off. And then busy channel lockout I've got off, but you can turn that on. You can do your scan channel ads. You can turn that off or on. Reverse the scan. Alarm type, the channel for the alarm. I don't do the alarms, and I'm not exactly sure what that's broadcasting. So I put it up on an empty channel because I didn't want to broadcast an alarm. And then, so on my channel A, B, C, and D on the radio, those 4 lines on the radio, I've got them each set to name, but you can make changes to channel and frequency, channel only, or channel and name. So there's some choices for there. You can have the radio go into an auto lock. You have a choice there with the drop-down menu. Here, the frequency mode parameters are dependent upon what you have selected. So this is the A frequency mode. And so we've got the frequency, high power. We've got the wide, narrow set to wide, and so forth as we work down these various choices. If we wanted to go into the C frequency, that's that 350 megahertz frequency. I'm not going to use that. I've got it turned off in that other display. So we'll go up here to A. Here's the B frequency, and then here's the D frequency. That's the 70 centimeter frequency. And then, as I mentioned in the description of all the menus, you've got just a whole bunch of color choice things for various things. So you can give yourself a power on message. I just left mine that says welcome. You could delete it so it doesn't show anything at all. And then here at the bottom of the display, I added my ammeter call sign. I think it had the radio model in there when I initially opened this up. Now here are my channels, and I've got a bunch of channels. If I wanted to go into Chirp, for example, I could download some GMRS frequencies. I couldn't transmit on them, but I could download them into this display in Chirp and then transfer them here. Or I can get like my weather channels and get them and transfer them here as well. So that's my channel arrangement. Again, these reflect what I did in Chirp. I downloaded to the radio, and then when I upload in here, they come along. Again, this is the programming software from Radioddity. When I'm done with all the changes, I'll go back to my file. I'll do a save as. I get a save dialog. In this case, I'm going to save it back to what it was before, the date that I made the changes. I'll confirm. It tells me it was complete. So now all my changes have been made to my data file here in this. And then if I wanted to write to the radio, I could use the icon, or I could come up here to my program menu and then write this to the radio. One of the big advantages of this small medium power radio is that it doesn't draw a lot of power from the vehicle and can be powered through one of your vehicle's 12-volt sockets. That means you've got lots of flexibility when mounting the radio in the vehicle. The antenna uses a PL59 connector, and so it works with my existing antenna mount. I clip the mount to a door near my truck's B-pillar and run the coax under the plastic trim, under the seat, at the base of the console, then up and into the console. I keep the extra length of the coax there and route the cable to the radio, making use of small detents that prevent the wires from being crushed. You might choose to mount via a trunk clip mount or other readily available mount. I was looking for easy and found the clip on the door meets my needs. Using the included 7900D antenna, I got SWR readings of 1.4 to 1 on the 2 meter band, 1.2 to 1 on the 70 centimeter band, and 1.8 to 1 on the 1.25 meter band. I use a cup mount style device to put the radio in an easy to see position, and it makes for an easy removal if I want to hide the radio in the console. So here are a couple of closing comments. First, the radio is small. That means it's easy to mount in a vehicle and doesn't pull much power. It does get a bit hot, so be aware of that when you handle the radio. As I mentioned in the menu discussion, programming repeaters is a bit odd in that you have to program in both the transmitter and receiver frequencies into the desired memory. You have to do that separately. The CPS works well, and the included programming cable worked when I followed the driver installation instructions. As I said before, I'd use Chirp to manage my channels, especially if you plan on filling up all the memory available with lots of different channels. I've gotten good signal reports, and the speaker is easy to hear when driving. If you want to get into mobile operations and don't want to break the bank, this little radio seems to do the trick. Hey, if you found this video helpful, please click the thumbs up button below the video and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel. Click the bell icon to be notified when I post new videos. 73, and thanks for watching.